Hey folks, this week as I gear up for the Sundance Film Festival at the end of January, we're going to launch an encore interview with our second ever guest on the show, film director Rayka Zehtabchi. When I first talked to Rayka in early 2019, nearly 3 years ago, I had just started my podcast and Rayka had just won an Academy Award for her Netflix film, Period, End of Sentence. I talked to her at her home in Los Angeles, with her Oscar sitting right next to our mic stands. And I owe much of the early success and momentum of the podcast to Rayka, who graciously shared her story with me and my listeners. We're replaying this episode as a tribute to Rayka because she has a short film premiering at Sundance in a few weeks called Long Line of Ladies, which is about a girl and her community preparing for a once dormant coming-of-age ceremony of the Karuk tribe of Northern California. I'm looking forward to seeing this film, and I want to congratulate Rayka and her co-director Shaandiin Tome as they get ready to showcase this film at Sundance. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this encore interview with Rayka Zehtabchi as it originally aired in April of 2019. Brian Smith here, and welcome to the Dream Path Podcast, where I try to get inside the heads of talented creatives from all over the world. My goal is to demystify and humanize the creative process and make it accessible to everyone. Now let's jump in. Well, folks, today you are in for a treat. We're going to talk to Rayka Zehtabchi, an Iranian-American filmmaker based in Los Angeles. Rayka's directorial debut, Madaran, was seen at film festivals around the world, winning multiple jury awards and qualifying her for the 89th Academy Awards in 2016. Rayka's short documentary, Period, End of Sentence, which is now streaming on Netflix, is about a group of village women in northern India who start a sanitary pad business in an effort to improve feminine hygiene and de-stigmatize menstruation. Along with the film's release, Rayka's film team co-founded the nonprofit The Pad Project to fight the stigma of menstruation and improve feminine hygiene worldwide. Period double qualified for the Academy Awards in 2018, winning jury and audience awards at Michael Moore's Traverse City Film Festival and Cleveland International. The film also took home jury and audience awards from AFI Fest, among many others, and won the Oscar this year in the documentary short category. Rayka's passion is telling stories that bring awareness and action to little-known social causes. The characters she puts on screen tend to be captivating, charismatic, and at times heartbreaking, as she reveals their journeys through their own narrative. Now let's listen to this fascinating conversation with Rayka, which takes us from her roots as an Iranian-American high school student in Los Angeles all the way to the stage of the 2019 Academy Awards. So where'd you go to film school?
I went to USC Film School. Graduated in 2016, August 2016. And I started making Period, End of Sentence. I was approached to direct it literally right out of film school. It was like a week after I graduated. Wow. And I was at the time kind of like, what am I gonna do? Because I knew I wanted to be a director, but you know, being a director is really hard because it's not like you start getting hired to direct stuff right away. You know, it's like a constant fight to build your portfolio while you're trying to stay afloat and like make rent and pay your student loans back and be an adult. So I was driving for Uber while I was making the film, the documentary. I was PAing on sets and freelancing and like doing random production design on like little short films and, you know, barely making any money doing that. But, and then I would shoot and direct actors' reels with my roommate. He would produce and edit them and I would direct them and my boyfriend would shoot them. And, you know, that became like a little source of income on the side as well. And we're just kind of like doing anything that we could to stay afloat.
So let's back up a little bit. So USC Film School, where did you go to undergrad or to high school?
USC was undergrad.
Yeah.
And I don't plan on going to graduate school. Basically, I started filmmaking 10 years ago in high school. I was 15 And I was doing theater, and I always wanted to do theater or be in entertainment somehow. My older sister is an actress, and I was kind of looked up to her. And growing up in my house, we were always watching movies for performance and analyzing them. It was just like, even my parents who aren't actors or aren't necessarily in the entertainment industry, they were super into that. So that's what we would do. And so I was eventually like, I really want to get into on-camera acting. I want to like step away from theater and like advance into the entertainment industry. And I basically was like, okay, well, I'm in high school, and I'm not gonna homeschool and go do full-time acting, and I need an agent. So I was like starting to think about, how you start to lay the foundation of an acting career in Hollywood. And one of my thoughts was, I think maybe it'll be beneficial if I take like a film class at my high school, maybe learning about what happens, like how you make a film, or like what happens behind the camera will help me learn what to do in front of the camera. And so I took my first like film, I think it was called TV video class. Hallie Kessler was my teacher, and I still keep in touch with her. I love her. But yeah, I started doing that and just making like shitty little things on camcorders and stuff. And I really liked it because I was like, wow, the feeling that I had when I would act, like it felt very fulfilling and gratifying, because you feel like you can like start to mold something within you, yourself as an actor. I felt like I was able to do that like all across the board when I was making a film. It felt like directing was awesome because you just have control over everything, like editing and the sound and music, the music that you put in your film, and where you want the camera to be, what you're trying to say, like what story you're trying to tell, all those things like were really gratifying to me. And and then I went to my first ever film festival. My teacher was like, hey, there's this thing called the Orange County Film Festival. You gotta go. And I was 15, and I went with my mom, and it was in my hometown in Irvine. But it was this high school film festival, and you enter, and it's like, it literally was like a mini Academy Awards. And now I've been to the Academy Awards, so I can literally say it was a little Academy Awards. And it was such a cool experience. I remember thinking, and this is a high school film festival, like for high school students. The students being awarded here are like 16, 17 years old. And I was able to watch some of their films. I mean, we were watching like music videos and short films. And I was so blown away and so impressed that like someone my age was doing that. I was like, oh my God.
Inspired.
Yeah, I was so inspired, and so inspired to see that like right in my own backyard, there's a whole community of filmmakers who are my age and their mentors supporting them, and that I could be a part of this program. I literally sat in the audience, and I was like, I want to be up on that stage next year. And I was, because I entered the program. The program is called Film Ed Academy of the Arts. So they're really unique in that it's basically this other, Film Ed is like it's a company that comes in and works with, I think, 10 or so high schools in Orange County. And they're basically like an extension of the film programs. So they'll offer like free film workshops in the summertime.
Oh my gosh.
Which is incredible.
That's
and you
so
get
cool.
access to like hundreds of thousands of dollars of gear.
Yeah.
Like I was a high school student, and they were entrusting me with like a Vericam, which is like an industry standard camera. And I was like carrying like Panasonic HPX 500s on my shoulder, and I was like 16 and shooting like football games. I didn't know what was going on in the football game, and I still don't know what goes on in football, but I was shooting that stuff. And it was just so incredible and empowering, I think, to see that like you have these mentors who are so like, they believe so much in the talent and in encouraging talent that they're willing to like do all of this for these kids who have never made films before, and to have someone believe in you so much and say, yeah, like you can do it. Here, take the camera. I don't care. Like, you know, I'm not worried about you breaking it. It's really empowering, and it really makes you feel at a young age that like the sky's the limit, and that really there should be nothing that, you know, should hold you back.
Well, that process, the filmmaking process, to me, and thinking back when I was younger and in high school, it seems like it's not very accessible, like,
right.
you know, to most people. So what a great program to be able to show kids that this is something that they can do. And, you know, here's the equipment.
Right.
Go for it.
And I think I'm understanding truly the value of community as well now. I understood it before, but you don't understand it until you're like thrusted into the entertainment industry and you're like a kid and you're just trying to figure out how to navigate your way into the world. But it creates a community. Like, I literally went to a bar with people who were in my program last night. And
your high school program?
My high school program. They're all filmmakers now. One of them just directed his first feature film, is on to direct his second feature film. He's like signed to CAA. Another one like is leading like the leading videographer and like part of the head of the marketing department of a high fashion brand. And I mean, it's crazy, like the community that you build. And these are all my friends, so they're always like available collaborations as well. And Dave Junker like was my mentor and all of our mentor, because he's the head of Film Ed Academy of the Arts, and he also started Orange County Film Festival. So what happened was, I was 15 when I started and when I joined Film Ed, and I got like advanced film education in the summertime. It was my junior year going into, it was the summer going into my senior year of high school. And then I made my first music video, like my senior year of high school. Like an MTV style music video? I wouldn't call it MTV style, because Film Ed is very like story driven. So I remember like always tell the story. That's one thing Dave always taught us. Always be character. Always tell the story. Like always focus on those things, because that's really like the heart of any film that you watch. You know, it was always like, hey, you have access to this really top-notch gear, but don't let that like drive you. Don't let that get in your way of really getting to the heart of characters and story. So like my first music video, it wasn't an MTV style music video. It was totally narrative, and it was like 3 different vignettes on different couples who were facing challenges. Like one of them was an interracial couple, one of them was a homosexual couple, one of them was interreligious couple. And like I had something to say when I was 16, clearly. You know, like I was focusing on these stories. And it's crazy because like I'm still focusing on those stories, you know. I still have like that's still in me. And it's just been nurtured over the years. You know, up until this point, you know. Yeah. It's just been nurtured, and it's really, I owe it to Dave Junker and the Film Ed Academy of the Arts team. Like So these people are incredible.
Back when you were 15, so that was 10 years ago. You're 25?
Yeah, I'm 25 now.
Okay.
It was 10 years ago.
So that, I'm trying to get a sense of the technology. Was that, like, you couldn't have shot on a phone, like an iPhone back then? Like
I could have.
You could have?
Yeah.
Okay.
But why would you?
Right.
When you
have
like,
access to all that equipment.
Yeah. And then and on top of that, it's not just the gear. You're getting like, they're literally training you how, like, in Final Cut. That was like when I first started. I started editing on Final Cut.
In high school.
In high school.
Wow.
And they're training you like, this is how you cut movies. Like, this is how you cut a story together. Make sure it's cohesive. Make sure we know what's going on. Make sure we, the character has a struggle, and you're following it and tracking it and teaching you story structure and arcs, and even teaching you, like, the only experience I ever had making any type of documentary was at Film Ed, not even at USC Film School. Like, I was getting top-notch film education that was, like comparable to what the film education I was getting at USC at 16 years old for free in my high school.
Right.
Yeah.
So the thing that sparked your interest in film was that first year when you saw that High School Academy Awards happening, and then the next year you were in it.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, it's not that it sparked it. I mean, I've always been interested in film. Like, my favorite film ever is Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, which is hilarious because it's like so far away from any type of film I would ever make. But I was so inspired by it, and I literally watched it when I was like 11, and I thought, this is a perfect movie. Aside from the orcs, of course, because they terrified me. But I thought, this is a perfect movie. Like, I was able to watch it, and I don't think I could quite articulate it because I didn't have the knowledge at that point, filmmaking knowledge at that point, but I really felt it in my bones, like, wow, it's beautiful. Like, every part of it is so beautiful. And it felt like the perfect kind of concoction to me. So I was always really interested in film and knew I wanted to eventually pursue film, whether it be acting or something behind the scenes. But it wasn't until that moment when I went to the first Orange County Film Festival where I literally was like, this is possible. Because it felt like when you watch a film and you think about, if you're not a filmmaker and it looks daunting. Like, you think about, how do you make that? I mean, it's just, it seems like the biggest mountain.
Well, especially a Peter Jackson film.
Especially a Peter Jackson that probably took like 10 years to make.
Right.
Yeah, so basically I graduated from high school and I immediately started working with Film Ed. I became an intern like a month out of high school. I started working with them, and literally the next summer I was teaching their workshops. I was teaching directing their high school film workshops. Now, this just goes back to Dave Junker and Christine Vu and the team at Film Ed Academy of the Arts just having this completely, like, creating this completely safe space and just saying, like, hey, we know you're 18 and we know you've never like truly directed a film, but we believe in you and we see something in you and we believe that you can do this and you can teach this course. And I literally learned directing through like putting together this curriculum.
So so you're teaching kids
high school students
that are like a year younger than you.
Yes.
how to make films. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was scary.
So what was the path to USC? How did that happen?
So when I graduated high school, I knew I wanted to go to film school at that point. I just knew, it wasn't really going to be financially feasible for my family. So so I did community college for a few years. And I was worried about that and I was in this very like, oh, should I do it? Should I go to film school, or should I just like not do it and just work on sets and just make my way? But education's always been really important to me. And I think my family also really wanted me to have that like core foundation, that film education at a film school. So, I did community college, and I got through all my GEs, and I was working at Film Ed. And, that was my source of income. That was my entrance into the film world. That was my like supplemental film education at the time. That's what kept me afloat and alive, my soul alive. And then basically I put together an application. I submitted to USC, and then I was accepted. And I was so happy I was accepted because I had only applied to UCLA and USC at the time. And I got rejected from UCLA. So if it weren't for USC, I don't really know if I would have ended, I would have gone to school.
Well, that's a tough school to get into as well.
Yeah.
I mean, USC. That's, impressive. So what is that, a 2-year or 4-year program?
So it's a 2-year because I transferred in. So I transferred in my junior year, and then my junior year, a very hard time for me in my life. Very hard because my dad actually was diagnosed with lung cancer when I was a senior in high school, like towards the end of my senior year. And that was when I was really getting into like actually making films at that point too. So it was really challenging for me, that kind of time, that transition from like graduating high school to, moving away from home for the first time and living alone when you know that, you know, your dad has cancer and is like, you know, it's getting worse and worse. So that was a really challenging time for me. And I was at my first year of film school, and literally it was like spring break. We were working on our first project, our first film that I was going to be directing. And this was like the first real like narrative film, no music video. Like this was like my first narrative project I was going to direct. And so, you know, I had like my producer and cinematographer, and we laid all the groundwork. And at that point, USC budgets you, like gives you $1,500 to make the film, which is hilarious to me because you're paying like $48,000 a year in tuition and you get like $1,500 to make your first movie. I think it's like pretty funny. But that's how USC's whole thing is like, it's not about the money. It's not about the gear. You know, it's not about getting like top-notch equipment or facilities, access to those facilities. It's literally about story. And it's about like the process and the journey and like being knee deep in it and understanding it like at its core without all the bells and whistles. Right. And that's what I love. Like, I really love that about USC because it felt a lot like film ed to me in that sense. But I digress. Anyway, so I was, you know, we laid all the groundwork and we were ready to go. Literally like a week away from shooting, and my dad's condition just like declined rapidly, and so I left and I went home, and it was literally like spring, like right before spring break, and my dad passed away at that point, and I was 21, and I was like a shell of a human being. I mean, my whole family, you know, it was a really challenging time. Because I was really close to him as well, and it's just really close to my family. So basically, I think what was happening was there was this kind of push and pull of like, do I go back to school or do I kind of sit the semester out? And I was really, I think, angry and upset that like this was my circumstance. And I was seeing like my peers and other students, like their circumstance was so different. They were like out there making movies, right? Having their time of their lives doing it.
They're not dealing with trauma. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And I really wanted that. And I was just frustrated. Like, why do I have to give that up? You know, if this is what I'm experiencing right now, if this is like what's going to help me, why do I have to give that up? So I was just like, I'm going back to school. So it was literally like less than a week later, and spring break was over and I went back to school, and I was like, I want to make the film, and I want to make it like bigger than a $1,500 budget. So, you know, and I wasn't so like, I think confident or, at this point, like I was really struggling, you know, it really took like, my boyfriend, Sam Davis, who's like my best friend for so many years at film. He was my best friend at that point at film school for only like 6 months, but we had like a very instant connection. He really helped me. Tenny, my best friend, really helped me. Avery Regan, who was like one of my really close friends at USC, they really, like, I literally remember it. I'm sorry, I'm gonna cry. I literally remember like Avery knocking on my door one morning, my apartment door, because I hadn't gotten out of bed to go to class. And she like brought me breakfast, and she literally pulled me out of bed. And it was like, it was because of that I was able to like keep doing it, you know, keep making films, keep going on when you're just like a kid in the middle of Los Angeles with, you know, it was a really hard time. So
did you have a chance to talk to your dad before he passed about what he wanted for you and what he was hoping for you vocationally or career-wise?
Yeah, I mean, my dad, like, I think he was very proud, and he knew, like, he kind of always knew that I had this, like, just undying tenacity, and that I would like really just do anything to make it happen for myself, you know. And then I was so lucky to have that support. You know, I had the support from my dad, I had it from my mom, from my sister, I had it from my whole film ed community. And it's just like, I just feel so grateful every day that like I'm able to do this because of the people that I have around me. And so many people don't get to do it,
It's incredible.
It's like you don't win an Oscar at 25 by yourself. Like
right.
You do it because you have people who have helped you get there, Well,
what's amazing hearing that about your family and the support that you got, and also from the community, is it seems like a career in the arts, and especially something as ambitious as film, is something that parents would be afraid of their kids pursuing.
Right.
Like, why don't you, at least have a backup plan.
Right.
But it sounds like they were just fully behind you on that.
I remember like the day that my USC acceptance letter came in the mail, like my dad knocked on my door at 7 a.m. and it was, the knock was so loud and so aggressive. I like jumped out of bed and he swings the door open and he's sobbing. And I was like, oh my God, who died? What happened? And he's just like, I'm so proud of you. And he shows me the red envelope. It like meant so much to him. It really did. It meant a lot to both my parents. So basically when I had gone back to USC, I like with the help of my classmates and my peers, we did like a Kickstarter campaign and we got together, I think it was like 10 grand or something. And we decided we're going to make the film in the summer. So like right when the semester ended, we went into production. And I was able to like realize my vision, I was able to make this like something that was a lot bigger and felt like a real movie. And we got the whole class to work on the film. And then we got like an executive producer, incredible guy who's like, I believe in you, gave us some more money and totally like championed the project. And I made my first narrative film, which was a totally Iranian language film, which meant a lot to me too, because my dad, like, I'm Iranian, both my parents are Iranian, and my dad just like was a very Iranian guy. And I really wanted to make an Iranian film because it honestly felt like me connecting with him in some way by doing that. So we made the film, and the film was, I think it helped me.
What was the name of it?
Madaran or Madaran.
Oh, Madaran.
If you want to say it in
Madaran?
English. Yeah. 10-minute short film, Iranian language, and it's set in Iran. It's about a mother who has to decide whether to end or spare the life of the man who killed her son, because with Islamic Sharia law, basically the victim's family has the right to decide whether or not they're going to hang the killer or save him. So she pardons him in the moment. And it's just it was based on a true story, and it was a really beautiful story. And I thought, something that was really positive that came out of Iran, and it wasn't even about like Islam. It was about like a mother having the power and using it for good. So that was my first film, and it was great. Like, it was a true directing experience. It was like there were like 80 people in the film, and there were extras, and there was like an execution scene, and it was a really big task for a first time filmmaker for a kid.
What are the logistics of a 21-year-old going to Iran to shoot a movie like this?
So I know the version in your head is probably a lot more cinematic than it actually was, but we shot it in San Pedro.
Oh, okay.
Which is in California,
not far from LA. You didn't go to Iran.
We didn't go to Iran.
You said it takes place in Iran, but it's not. But it's not shot in Iran.
No, it's set in Iran.
Okay, yeah.
So we shot it in San Pedro, and we shot at Fort MacArthur, which is this cool, like, old U.S. military fort. And it really, I'm proud to say, like, even today, like, having, I think, grown a lot more as a filmmaker, I watch it back now and I'm like, wow, that was really, that felt really authentic. That's been the feedback too from a lot of Iranians. But it was an incredible experience, and I really fell in love with filmmaking then. I mean, I had always loved it, but it's not till you really have your first big experience where you're like tired and just like there's so many fires you have to put out every day, and it's exhausting, and you're giving everything of yourself to this thing. And I just walked away from it and I was like, wow, I felt full, you know? Like it helped me come back to life after my dad's passing.
Do you still have family in Iran?
I do, yeah.
And what do they think of that short?
They think it's great. A lot of like the Iranian community has responded really positively because it's a positive story about Iran, you know? And you don't see that often. And I like to change that narrative.
So after that summer, you finished shooting by the end of summer?
Yes.
Yeah.
We actually only shot for 2 days. And then it took us like 4 months to edit the film.
Yeah.
And Sam Davis, my boyfriend, he edited the film. He shot the film as well. So it was very scrappy and fun. It was great. It was really fun.
And what happened with that movie?
So it did festivals all over the country. It did festivals around the world. It won a ton of filmmaking awards, and it helped me get an agent and a manager when I was still in school. Amazing. Yeah. It was really great. And it really I think the one thing that a lot of students don't get exposure to when they're in school is they'll make the film, but like the life of the film ends after the film is made and screened once in a theater at school.
Yeah.
And the really important thing to learn is like, what is the life of the film after you've made it, you know, because that's really where it's a whole other phase in the filmmaking journey, and it takes on a whole new form. And people need to see the film, and conversations need to be started about it, and film festivals, awards, like distribution, like all of that stuff is like the really heavy business side of film that a lot of students don't ever get to learn. So I was really like grateful that I was learning a lot of these things while I was still at school.
And you were not learning them in school. You were learning them through.
Yeah. And you can't learn them in school because in school you're just making the films. Like no one's really, there's a class where they're like, okay, you could distribute it by doing this and you can submit it to film festivals, but it's not until you do it and you really show up to the film festivals and you experience when you really like learn how to navigate this other world.
Right.
That is often really uncomfortable for filmmakers because we're not, used to being in the spotlight. We're just always in the background and we're there just doing the art, making the work. But it's a whole other process, and it's very key and important. How do you market the film? Like, the narrative that you create in marketing the film is just as important, if not more important, than the narrative in your film, because no one will see it otherwise. Right. So, that's something I learned throughout period end of sentence, that process. And it was just, Madaran was like a really great experience in that sense where like, I was getting so much education out of it. And like to this day, I'm still learning like things from Madaran and period end of sentence, like continued things, Madaran never got distributed, but period end of sentence did. And that just like, that was like a whole other experience. And I learned how to do an Oscar campaign. Like, that's crazy.
Well, let's talk about that. Before we talk about the Oscar campaign, tell us about, you're finishing up with your editing of Madaran. It doesn't get distributed. And then you're still in your senior year at that point at film school?
Madaran is finished, and I'm doing festivals, and I'm at my senior year at USC, and then I directed a thesis film at USC.
So, in your senior year, how does period end of sentence hit your radar, if it does at all, during your actual senior year?
So it was right when I had graduated, but before that, I had worked on I was in school and I had worked on in the summertime a production called Cobalt 60. And it was a short that my friends, Jake Bernstein and Brandon Verdi were making. And Sam was DPing the film, and I was doing helping them with art department. And it was there that I met Garrett Schiff, who is a producer and writer. And Garrett had known Sam through another project, Love and Honor, that they shot in Michigan years ago. It was Sam's first production he ever worked on as an intern. So, Sam had a great relationship with Garrett, and I met Garrett there very briefly. But that was it. And then, less than a year later, I just graduated from film school, and Garrett called me up and was like, hey, my daughter, Ruby, is in a club at her high school, and there's this issue of women and girls who have to drop out of school when they begin to menstruate, and there's a lack of access to sanitary hygiene products where they are. And this happens a lot in developing countries and also in the United States as well. And they want to make a documentary about it. And they want to install this low-cost sanitary pad-making machine that this Indian man, Mr. Muruganantham, had invented to combat the issue. They want to install that in a village in India. I know you've never made a documentary before, but I've seen your short, Madaran, and I loved it. Let me know if you're interested, because we need a young female director. And I was on a plane headed to Scotland to go see my family. I have family in England, so we were doing a little vacay. So I was literally boarding the flight, and I'm so glad I took his call, because I was going to push it, and I wouldn't have talked to him probably for, another couple weeks. And so I was like, okay, Garrett, I'm going to get back to you. And I literally, I couldn't stop thinking about it the entire plane ride. And that's a long plane ride. And I just was crying. I couldn't stop crying, because I just felt so disappointed in myself and kind of ignorant. Just the fact that I was like, how could I have never thought about women not having access to these products? Why wouldn't that thought ever cross my mind?
You start looking at your place of privilege.
You start looking at your place of privilege and kind of being disappointed in yourself for not having paid attention to the outside world, and I never had that problem, because I was pads and tampons were, very present and plentiful. It was like toilet paper. It was never a question of whether or not I would go a period without having one. And so I thought this was very actionable, and if it wasn't going to be a great film for any reason, either way, I would have still done something and joined a movement. And I just saw a lot of opportunity in it. And so I said yes. And, while I was in Scotland, I did a couple Skype calls with Garrett. And then when I got back, I had my first meeting with the producers of the film. I entered into an English classroom at a high school in Los Angeles, met the English teacher who was going to be one of the producers on the film, Melissa Burton, the woman who now has an Oscar.
she was up on the stage with you, right?
She was, Melissa's our producer. Garrett was a producer. Lisa Tabak was a producer. And I was a producer as well. Then I walk into the room and I meet our other producers, who will be our executive producers, and they're high school girls. They were juniors in high school and seniors in high school, all girls. They had some boys in the club too, but they didn't show up for that first meeting. The girls basically were like, this is our thing. This is what we focus all of our time and our energy on.
Oh, this is Oak Ridge?
This is Oakwood.
Oakwood.
Oakwood School.
Oakwood, yeah.
In Los Angeles. And And it's an LA school, so there's all sorts of resources, you know. There's resources and access to Hollywood. So so it's a good place to be, you know, because if you're making a film with no budget, like you can try and pull favors and get resources. And we had a lot of help and involvement from the community because they were so, I think, everyone was so passionate about this cause and also so motivated to see, like, when they saw that their daughters were so motivated, they, you know, people were just so inspired to step in and help out. So yeah, I mean, initially I think the thought was like, let's make a documentary, and, you know, like it could have been like a YouTube video or something. But I think we really saw the potential and like what this could be. And, you know, I was like, if I'm making my first documentary, like I want this to be big. I want it to be like cinematic and beautiful, and like, I don't want it to be like other documentaries, because I feel like a lot of the times there are a lot of cinematic, like we didn't do anything groundbreaking here. There are a lot of cinematic documentaries that have like great story arcs and follow character and are beautiful and are entertaining and fun to watch. But there are also a lot of documentaries where you feel like you're being fed medicine. And this is very a cause-based film. There's a cause behind it. There is a lot of information and research to like basically share. Because especially for Westerners, like this is the first time a lot of people have ever heard about this issue. So it's really important to not make this feel like a PSA, to not make it feel like, you know, there's a narrator and like people are feeding you information and there's title cards giving you all this statistics and stuff. Like, I didn't want any of that. I wanted you to see a face and feel what she's experiencing and to really like root for her as she's fighting her way out of it.
You had real characters. I mean, I don't know what the casting situation was and how that, you know, what that process was, but you had, and the person who comes to mind the most is it Sneha? Sneha? Yeah. I mean, talk about charisma.
She's amazing.
Yeah. And just,
I think she's going to be president one day.
Yeah. I mean, just rugged individualism.
She's
and
so cool.
She doesn't let the culture, you know, define what her goals are going to be. And, but what an amazing cast. I mean, it's awkward to call it a cast because they're
subjects of the film.
Real people there. But
I wanted it to be that way, like observational, like you go in there and there are so many personalities in there and these women have so much to say, you know? And it's like, I don't have to impose that narrative on them. They're just giving it to us. And they're also special. And these are all the women that just originally gravitated toward working on the machine. They're like the women that are like, that are full-time working on the machine now.
Yeah. And I found when I was watching it that you really, when you get rid of the distraction of the narrator and the, you know, the director inserting themselves, you know, whatever it is, the, you know, the cue cards or whatever, you add a lot of credibility and heart and humanity to something that could be kind of overlooked as, you know, some type of of dogma, you know, but this was really powerful. I saw it at the Sundance Film Festival up there, awesome. And I was watching it with a bunch of other documentary shorts that were packed into this evening in this auditorium, and I could not really wrap my head around how you could pack so much into 26 minutes.
Yeah.
Because at the end, I was crying at the end of this movie, and I'm like, okay, how does that happen? How does that happen? It's a foreign language film, so I'm reading subtitles, you know, and these are people that are not part of my culture, so it's probably more difficult for me to connect with them just as an American and a place of privilege that I'm in. But somehow you did it. So what was that process for you, and was it intentional?
Well, I didn't do it. I did it with
your team,
with my team,
right.
And primarily with Sam, who is the unsung hero in all of this, because the DP, editor, they never get the attention the way that the director or the producers do. So I think it's really important to point out that he was absolutely instrumental in the process, and that, you know, like the film was born out of, basically not born out of, but the film was constructed like in Sam's bedroom, like on his iMac. We made it together. Like we would just like sleep, wake up, edit, sleep, wake up, edit. Like that was the process. I think it was always intentional. Like me and Sam, you know, we've been best friends. You know, we're a couple now. We have been for 2 years. And I think we just really get each other, like on a creative and personal level. And we both have the same sort of, I think, instincts when it comes to filmmaking. And we both just really value truth and realness. And I think we just both really wanted that in this film. You know, we both knew that, like, we wanted this to be observational, and that really, like, there is nothing that is more, I think, beautiful and makes you care more than, like, connecting to another human being on the screen. And if you can do that, like you said, with a human being whose culture you don't share and language you don't share, then you've done something right. And so that was intentional. Like, we wanted to capture the soul of India, but have that be kind of in the background, you know, like the soul of India is captured like through the cuts and through the sound design, things that are not like blatant. You know, you hear like the sound of a rickshaw in the city, and it's loud and it's chaos, and it cuts to just like, it's a hard cut to pure like silence. And all of a sudden, you know that you're in the villages, and you know that there's like this peace and this like order that's happening. That's like sound design and cuts. So we really wanted to kind of capture all of that. Through, I think, every thread of filmmaking.
Yeah. I mean, you can hear the industrial process of making the pads. I mean, there's, you really...
Yeah, sound plays a really big character.
It really does. I mean, it takes you in it. And it's like you feel like you're there in the room when those machines are pushing down. And then you hear the kind of the shy, kind of embarrassed laughter of the kids when they're asked, you know, what about, you know, their period, or they ask the boys about it. And like, I've heard about that. I don't know what it is, you know? And, but it's the reactions, the subtle, like little nuances of just capturing and observing. Like you say, it's observational. It was made a powerful
I think too, like right off the bat, our gut was like, no. We like, this will not be a heavy, dark, sad film about like periods and how, you know, we are so like, these women are so disadvantaged because of like their position in society and because of their periods and lack of access. And like, we want this to be empowering. We want this to be uplifting. It can be funny. Like it can, you know, it can be heartbreaking. And like, it would be reductive to make a film that's just one-sided and dark and emotional, because that's not like what the experience is. That's not what the human experience is. Human experience is complex. Like 1 second you're laughing, the next second you're crying. I'm clearly proof of that today. And we really wanted to capture that. And we did. I mean, it's not hard to do, you know? It's really not. When you're really like paying attention, it's not hard to do. Yeah, so I'm really glad. I mean, this is like what the outcome of the, you know, this is how the film turned out to be, because it feels like it hits all those notes. It's empowering, it's funny, it's, you know, has a certain pace and rhythm that's motivated and feels like women in charge. And one of our executive producers called it, the first time you ever watch it, he said, it's a fist in the air. It's literally a fist in the air. And it's funny because like that's our poster too. That's what it ended up being, is a fist in the air.
That's so
a few
awesome.
Fists in the air.
Yeah, it felt like a fist in the air. I mean, it just felt like, you feel like these women have found a way to empower themselves,
right?
And I love the comment from the principal toward the end where she talks about, I'm a little bit feminist,
just a little bit,
yeah, and that's so great because maybe right now in that culture, in this moment, you cannot. It's just not possible to be, a full-on 100% feminist because it just won't be tolerated or they're not ready or whatever. But it's nice to see that opening happening, and to see these, and also to see the men in the film. I was kind of expecting the men to be more resistant to and more averse to.
I totally was too.
Yeah, but they were really open to it. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I was like, before we even went there, I was imagining a version in my head where like the man like walks in and is yelling at us and is like pushing the women out and shutting down the whole operation. And, that's like the cinematic version in your head. But I was surprised. I was like, they were quietly resistant. They were like, the women told the men that it was a Huggies machine at first. I think some men maybe knew that it wasn't a Huggies machine. But they showed resistance in that they didn't really want to talk to us about menstruation, which is totally understandable. Like, yeah, you don't want to go on camera and talk about menstruation. That's fine. But I think eventually, like, seeing the success of the pad machine, seeing that, like, their daughters and their wives were working and bringing money into the household and, like, were excited every day to, like, go to work and do this thing. I think they, like, really saw the power of it all. And I think they, for the most part, like, a lot of them are very supportive. I think it's natural to like feel uncomfortable and shy away from it. I mean, hey, I felt uncomfortable before I started making this film talking about my period. I would have never in a million years imagined going on the stage at the Oscars in front of millions of people around the world and like basically talking openly about my period.
Right.
I would have never done that. Like,
well, it's still in this culture. It's not something, I mean, in America, it's not something that we talk about openly. And,
right.
And I think there's a certain degree of shame associated with it for women and young girls. And so I think it's not only important for us to understand their culture and how women are having to drop out of school and not getting the education they need in India, but I think it also you kind of look back on our own culture. Mm-hmm. It forces you to kind of look at the shame that surrounds certain subjects that shouldn't be there, Yeah,
and also I think there's this really quick and easy assumption that, it happens in India. It doesn't happen in the United States. Like women aren't missing out on any type of education because of their periods in the U.S. It's just like, we're just ashamed, we just are uncomfortable. That's all. And then you dig deeper and you realize that, wait a minute, there was like a machine that provided sanitary pads installed in a school, in a high school years ago. And attendance in the school from the women, from the females went up. Like it was a direct correlation. And then you think about, you're like, okay, so there are women in lower income communities who actually have to miss school or actually really can't afford pads. And then I'm talking to young girls who come from lower income communities and are like, oh yeah, I couldn't afford a tampon. I just use toilet paper and I just like wrap it up into a wad whenever I have to. And you're like, wow, the problem exists here too. It's just like almost more shameful to talk. It's not more shameful, but we just have this, I think we're predisposed to think that, we're America, like the United States, we're already privileged and these issues don't affect us, but they really do.
Yeah. Well, and I think my daughter was just talking to me the other day about a debate she was having in high school English class or social studies about the tax on tampons and feminine hygiene products because the government has considered them to be luxury items. You know, and it's a reflection, I think, of how our culture looks at feminine issues. You know, so the pad project was that in place when you first met the high school kids?
It was in the works.
Okay.
So we basically launched the PAD project, like the official nonprofit organization. Like the producers on the film are all board members. I actually have like a board meeting next week for the PAD project. We launched it like when we released the film, and that was, part of like gaining more exposure and being able to like, create some traction. But basically, like the work and the team of the PAD project, like that existed even before it officially became a nonprofit,
Right.
Yeah.
So, and what has this film done for the PAD project that you've seen? Has it gotten a lot more exposure?
Yeah, of course. I mean, one argument we hear, which was always a concern from the beginning, is like a lot of parents would say this too, is why are we raising money on Kickstarter and not putting all that money toward buying another pad machine? Why are we putting that money toward making a film? And my argument now, and it's been all of our arguments all along, is like, be patient. This film will bring exposure to this issue and this topic, like to millions of people around the world. Or at least that was the initial goal. And then we won't have problem getting funds for more pad machines. Like we might be able to buy one more pad machine right now, but imagine the number of pad machines we can buy when there are people like in Nepal and in China, like all over the world, having these conversations and aware of this. And then the film had this incredible, journey after life where, we did really well in film festivals and people were really responding well to it. And then we got shortlisted for an Oscar, and then we got nominated, and then Netflix acquired the film, and now it's in like over 300 countries, playing in 300 countries on Netflix. It won the Oscar. It's like, I can't even imagine how many people have been watching this short film. And that's the most valuable thing, is like we've started this really important, essential conversation around the world. That we wouldn't have had if we had just purchased one other pad machine.
You've literally built global awareness of this issue.
Yep.
And undoubtedly, people are probably donating to the padproject.org.
Oh, yes, they are. I mean, it's been crazy. The donations are flying in, and it's really great. I mean, we have a meeting next week because we really need to figure out how to like restructure to deal with all of this, because, it was born out of a classroom. Like we didn't realize that we would all of a sudden blossom and explode into this massive organization. I mean, it's still small and it's still grassroots, still same people. But now we're having to deal with like all of these requests, all of these potential collaborations, all of these donations, and, trying to figure out where needs the most amount of pad machines and, what's the best way to use the money. Like, so all of that stuff.
The logistics of this shoot, how many days were you in the country?
So Sam and I went to India twice. First time was right when the machine had been delivered. So we were able to capture like the training on the machine and kind of the mentality and thinking behind menstruation, like before the machine was really a part of their lives. So we were there for like 3 weeks. I think we only shot, 2 weeks. We only shot like a week. Second time we went back, it was 6 months after the machine had been installed, and we captured the progress, and that was like another 7 days. We shot about 2 weeks worth of footage. It was 40 hours.
And it was primarily you and Sam?
Yeah, so me and Sam were the only ones that went to India, and then we had a local crew there. Yeah.
And so when you're waking up every morning and you're hopping on the iMac and cutting up this film, How much raw footage were you dealing with?
40 hours.
40 hours of raw
40
footage.
40 hours of raw footage, and trying to kind of distill it down to its essence and get it down to a short. I mean, it was definitely a moment where I was like, we can make a feature film out of this. Like, let's just do like a 90-minute feature or something. But you start carving and you realize that really the best version of this story, the sharpest, the most like efficient, is in 25 minutes. It is. And it took a lot of, I think, advice and eyeballs to sort of help us get to that place.
Was it painful to cut?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're killing your darlings, you know. It's always really hard to do that because you're so precious about everything.
Yeah. But you just have to focus on exactly what is needed.
You do, and
to move that narrative forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it was shocking to us to realize that, wow, you really can jam pack all of that in 25 minutes and not have it feel like it was truncated in any way or reductive in any way. Like it feels like it flows, you know?
So you get it down to 25 minutes. When did you realize, when was the first moment that you realized that this was something really special?
I think final cut, like when me and Sam watched it in his apartment, we literally looked at each other and we're like, oh my God. I mean, there was always like, do you think Oscars? Do you think? I don't know, but like our first goal was like, let's just get into Tribeca. We really want to get into Tribeca Film Festival. And then we didn't, because, well, I don't know what the reason is, but we also submitted like a really rough cut to Tribeca because we were just not done at all making the film. So first goal was like, let's just get into like a major festival, and like see where it goes. But you know, like we had experienced Madaran in festivals, and it's really like hard to gauge. I mean, some audiences in some places will respond to your film. Some audiences in some places won't respond well to your film. And these film festivals are really trying to cater to their audiences. You know, it's sometimes not as much about what the programmer's tastes are as much as it is about who they're programming for. So there was definitely a concern of like, okay, this is a film about menstruation. Like, we really hope that half of the country isn't going to ignore this film. And they didn't. I mean, it was a really good festival run and people were really responsive.
Yeah. Well, I've talked to a lot of people about this movie, and it's,
thank you.
It's, yeah. I'm fascinated that this is something that nobody has really known about up until your movie came out. I mean, the cultural inhibitions and
the power of filmmaking.
Yeah, but the people that I've talked to, I mean, I've talked to deeply religious people when I was in Utah, talking to a lot of Mormons about this movie, and the response has been just universally great. I mean, they're like, I need to see this movie, or I have seen this movie, or I saw it and I told my wife we have to watch it, you know. And it's pretty cool to see so many people connecting on an issue like this, that you would think would be maybe more, I guess the demographic would be a female audience that would be interested in this. But I haven't found that to be the case.
I mean, Sam always says this, and I love it because he was like one of the few men really, who pushed this project forward. He's like, he always says, like, men are 50% of the population. You know, this is a movie for women, for men, just as much as it is for women, because if men are not allies and men are not, also sparking these conversations with other men, like, we haven't solved the issue. So yeah, and I think that's a really important point.
Right. So when did the Oscar campaign begin in your mind? When did you start thinking this is possible?
Well, I mean, we thought it was possible our first film festival when we did Cleveland International Film Festival. That was our premiere, and we won the jury award, which qualified us for the Oscars at Cleveland, which is really remarkable because sometimes you go, 8 months, you do your entire festival run and you never get that one qualifying jury award. You win tons of awards, but it's never the one. So it was really amazing that we had that right out of the gate, and it made it possible for us. And then we won another Oscar qualifying jury award at Traverse City Film Festival, which is Michael Moore's film festival. Awesome festival. We won that there, and we were like double qualified, which is crazy. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. And then like right before the shortlist, we were accepted to AFI Fest, which is like a really big festival, and I think gives you a lot of visibility as well. And Savannah SCAD Film Festival, those festivals give you a lot of visibility, and at that point, I think we were like, okay, we're gaining a lot of momentum, and like it feels like bigger and bigger entities are responding and watching, and hopefully that'll give us enough visibility so that we can get on the shortlist. Because the difficulty about getting on just the Oscar shortlist is visibility. Like there's so many great films out there, shorts, that so many people just don't see because they're not visible. They don't have distribution, or just not enough people are watching because, people don't prioritize short films. So once you start to get attention from big festivals, I think it really helps with that visibility and the buzz and people, word of mouth and people talking about it.
Nice. Yeah. So Savannah, and then when did you find out that you talked about a short list? I don't know what the short list is, but.
Yeah. So basically like there's a whole process. So in order to qualify to even submit to the Oscars, you have to win an Oscar qualifying, a jury award at a specific Oscar qualifying film festival. And I think there's 80 of them or something, or maybe less. There's only like 80 or so film festivals that the Academy has like approved and said these are Oscar qualifying festivals. You can't just win any award. You have to win the Oscar qualifying award at the Oscar qualifying film festival. And then once you qualify, I think that narrows it down to like 160 or something short documentaries, where there were, probably thousands and thousands before. And then the Oscar voters will vote out of those 160 and decide on a 10 film shortlist. So once you've made the shortlist, then it becomes mad dash to get the film in front of more people and hopefully get, more votes so that you can be nominated, be one of the 5 nominated films.
Wow. So the short list is 10 long. Mm-hmm. And then is that when the actual campaign starts, when you're trying to really get the word out?
I think you're kind of campaigning beforehand too, because you're really trying to put the film in front of people. And, I mean, I was like sobbing. We all were sobbing when we found out we made the shortlist, because maybe to answer your question, maybe that was the moment where we're like, wow, this is real. The Oscars, like this, there's actually a chance here. Because when you're 160 films, it's still like, anything can go. But when it's 10 films, it feels a lot more serious and a lot more real.
So when in the year was that? Was that 2000?
That was December. That was like December? 2018. Yeah. Wow. It all happened so quickly.
Yeah.
I can't even believe it was just a few months ago.
So does that mean that everyone on every producer on your team is nominated as well?
No. So with shorts, they're very strict about it's only the director and then maybe one producer.
So Melissa then?
Yeah. So it was Melissa. So only 2 people get nominated, only 2 people get the Oscars. And, it's like you wish everybody could, and you want it to be a very inclusive process. Unfortunately, it's not.
Right.
But, you have to kind of keep the, I think you can't be like blinded. You can't like lose sight of what it is that you're doing in the mission of the film, it's not about the Oscars. It's really not. And it's so incredible because it's giving you so much exposure, but it's not giving you so much exposure as much as it's giving the film so much exposure and this cause so much exposure. Like that was such an incredible experience to see how people all over the world were responding.
So what was that build up like between December and was it March? Was it early
February
March?
24th.
It was late February.
Yeah. It was just like you hit the ground running, and it's like you're just nonstop every single day, full time committed to this Oscar campaign. Like I didn't work during that time. I shot me and Sam did a short documentary for the Special Olympics, which we're currently editing right now, which is awesome. But aside from that, like we didn't, it was like fully being committed to this campaign because you're doing press and you're doing events and you're screening the film at tons of different places. And it's just like conversation with people. And it really just takes over your life for those, 2 or 3 months.
And then does anybody prepare you for the evening itself to tell you like what to do and where to sit and what to wear? It's all very
orchestrated, it's a well-oiled machine. And, luckily Netflix had acquired the film right when we got nominated. So we had Netflix's awards campaign and publicity team, which is like the best in the world. Yeah. Truly is. And there was a lot of guidance and help there, to try to make this process not feel daunting.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of good support. We felt really supported. We really did.
And so the kids that helped with the film, the high school kids, were they part of that evening at all?
Yeah, no longer high school kids. I mean, a lot of them are in college now, but the core team was there. Yeah, the core group of girls who started the whole movement. They all flew out from all over the country and came to attend the Oscars. And then the coolest thing was to have our friends from India, our producers from India, and the subjects of the film, and our friends from Action India, which is the organization that we worked with in Delhi, who gave us access to the villages. It was six people who were able to come out here to the Oscars as well. So cool. And Sneha was there.
Sneha was there?
Sneha was there, and it was her first time. She lives 2 hours from Delhi in the villages, and she had never even been to Delhi, which is a major city.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she came to Los Angeles, Hollywood Academy Awards. She was very overwhelmed.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and it was just so much fun. Yeah.
Do you know if she's made it into the police academy or not? Or?
She's still waiting.
Yeah.
But she's a celebrity now. People are honoring her, and she's really becoming very well respected and powerful in a much bigger community all over India. So hopefully, she can achieve that dream, if not more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sorry if I'm asking too many Oscar-related questions, because this is just so cool I've never talked to anybody who's been through this process. So you're there at the Oscars, and there's 5 people up for this award. And what were your thoughts about your chances of actually winning?
I was numb. I wasn't thinking about it, which I know sounds crazy, but I was just numb to it. I turned into a stone because I didn't want to, I don't know. I think I was just really nervous and anxious, and it's feels like one of the most important times of your life up until this point. And I was I'm not going to throw up. I'm not going to have a panic attack right now. I'm not going to just burst out into tears constantly because I would normally. I was just nope. Totally unfazed by it all. Yeah. I was well, the red carpet was a lot smaller than I thought it would be, and wow, Dolby Theater is a lot smaller. This whole thing is wow, really interesting. I really felt like I was on the outside looking in, I really truly did. And then when we ran up on the stage, it's I just went blank.
Well, it didn't seem like you went blank. I mean, it seemed like you were a natural up there. I mean, just so full of energy. And
blank, you're, I wasn't edited. I wasn't in my head. I just was it just poured out of me, and it was just pure emotion.
And
I think it was also what I was able to let go of after a whole evening of just being bottled up and
Yeah.
It's like silent and just like cold.
I recorded it on my cell phone. I was just like sitting
God.
there, and then I
Thank
texted Tanine afterwards. I was just like, she did it. I can't believe it. It's so cool to see that happening to someone.
And my mom was there, which is amazing.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I wish I could have brought the rest of my sister and the rest of my family, but they were at the Netflix viewing party, and then we met with them right after the Oscars. But my mom was there. My mom was like in the balcony.
How did she handle it all?
I mean, like, I asked her like literally a week later. I was like, so Mom, what was your reaction? Because I didn't have a phone. Like, my phone was in my purse, and my purse was left, at the seat when I ran up on stage. And then you go backstage and you do press for like an hour backstage. There's like so much stuff happening back there. So I literally was like away from my phone for 2 hours. I didn't like get a chance to talk to anybody. So I was like, I asked a week, I'm like, Mom, what was your reaction? She was like, oh my God, I couldn't stop screaming. I was sobbing. And she's like, I kept screaming even after your category.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah. So what's next for you?
So this has been a really interesting and cool kind of rebuilding period for me. I almost feel like I'm starting anew. Like, it almost feels like I'm right out of film school. And I'm just starting from scratch again, which is crazy to think, but it's true. I mean, I just signed to like an incredible commercial production company. It's like one of my favorite companies, some of my favorite people, Pretty Bird. And I'm a director on their roster now, which is awesome. And I'm so excited about.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's like, I'm really excited about that. And I have my wonderful agents, and they're all, setting meetings for me. And I have a few projects that I can't really talk about. They're like a couple documentary features that I'm like developing. Which one I'll do, I don't know yet. And then I have a narrative feature that's about my Iranian family immigrating from Iran to the United States in the 90s, kind of in the vein of Little Miss Sunshine.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, I still want to make documentaries, and I still want to make narrative films. I don't want to like pigeonhole myself in any way. And I want to make commercials. Like, why not?
Well, and you got a lot. It sounds like you got a lot to choose from.
Yeah. I mean,
a lot of opportunities.
I need to have an income. It's always funny to think like you won the Oscar and like you're set, and it's like, no, I have like no money.
Yeah. Well, documentary.
It'll start to, as I start getting the projects up and going, it'll start to get a little bit more comfortable, hopefully. But I think that's just like when you prioritize the stories and you prioritize the heart and the cause and the mission, like when you're doing it for those reasons, the money is like always kind of left out and forgotten, you know, and you need to start to like bring that in because you can't survive without it. So I'm starting to think that way a little bit more. But I think still, no matter what, whatever path my career takes, it's going to be something that, the projects I do will be rooted in social activism. They'll be like, I'm getting a lot of offers to do a lot of projects. And I'm not taking a lot of them because I'm not interested or invested in them. I could, because it'll bring me money and it'll, continue to build on this momentum. But that's not as important to me as just like being truthful and kind of, like true to yourself. I hate to sound cliche, but really true to yourself.
Well, you're following your passion, and which is story. And that's not always going to take you to money.
Tell the story, Dave Junker. I always remember from my film ed days, tell the story. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on the Oscar, on the film, the success of the PAD project. What an amazing story. And thanks for sitting down with me.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. It's a great conversation. Yeah.
It was great. Hey, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Dream Path podcast. If so, I have a favor to ask. Can you go to your favorite podcast service and give me a rating and review? Your feedback is what keeps this podcast going. I appreciate your time, and as always, go find your dream path.